Just everyday life is here. How is this everyday life different from the previous everyday life? Which is why I was never fascinated by all those comparisons between revolution and carnival. You know, Mikhail Bakhtin, the fellow traveler of Russian formalists, developed this point nicely on how, apropos François Rabelais, he developed this, how we have those wonderful moments in social life where social hierarchy disintegrates, a slave is a master is a slave, everything is turned around, there is sudden freedom, old rules no longer apply, and so on and so on. And some stupid leftists took this as a paradigm of the revolution. Now, my friend, I don't always agree with him, but here I do, Boris Groys, the Russian theorist working in Germany, told me a wonderful thing. Recently they discovered some manuscripts of Mikhail Bakhtin in Kazan. Why? He was exiled there in the age of Stalinism. That's how he survived. And it's clear from those manuscripts what was for him carnival. It wasn't a liberating experience. The secret reference was Stalinist purchase. This was for Bakhtin the true carnival. Today I'm member of a central committee, tomorrow I'm prisoner in Gulag, and so on and so on. This total chaos in social hierarchy. So there is nothing subversive in it. The true problem, again, is not to say we need a release of fresh energy. Our life should not be ossified in fixed structures and so on and so on. No, it should be ossified, but in different structures. That's the difficult thing to do. It's easy to have, again, ecstatic moments of freedom. Oh, we are all free. Okay, we are free for 1 week, for 3 weeks, for 5 weeks, and then? That's why, if you permit me to repeat an old joke of mine, that's why I find very problematic the film, which many leftists like very much, I don't, V for Vendetta, if you saw it. You remember the final scene? Wonderful ecstasies, carnival. The crowd penetrates the police cordon, enters the parliament, people take over. But, as I like to say in my tasteless way, I'm ready to sell my mother into slavery to see a film called V for Vendetta Part 2. Okay, the people have won. What happens the next day? What new laws do they pass? How do they do it? How do they reorganize state apparatus, and so on and so on? So now I will go more in detail and in where I see the problem, and again, I am on purpose provocative. When one hears anarchists deploying their idea of local communities which work in a transparent way, with no alienated representative mechanisms, with all members engaged in organizing their lives, one should recall that their survival of these non-alienated local communities relies on a thick texture of alienated institutional mechanisms. Where do electricity and water come from? Who guarantees the rule of law? To whom do we turn for healthcare? And so on. The more a community is self-ruling, the more this network has to function smoothly and invisibly. So maybe we should change the goal of emancipatory struggles from overcoming alienation to enforcing the right kind of alienation. How to achieve a smooth functioning of alienated, invisible social mechanisms which sustain the space of our local, non-alienated lives. You know, we all like this idea. We are a community, we debate all the time, but are we aware how many things must function in the background for this to be possible? And We have an old name for these alienated mechanisms, bureaucracy, which is why the left needs today to reinvent bureaucratic socialism. The standard characterization of Stalinist regimes as bureaucratic socialism, I think, is totally wrong. It is the way the Stalinist regime itself perceived its problems, the cause of its failures and troubles. Stalinists always claimed if there are not enough products in the stores, if authorities do not respond to people's demands, and so on, then they always blamed the bureaucratic attitude of indifference, and so on. No wonder that from the late 20s onwards, Stalin was writing attacks on bureaucracy, on bureaucratic attitudes. But I think that paradoxically, what didn't function, it's not that Stalinism was too bureaucratic. It wasn't bureaucratic enough. Nothing functioned. Bureaucracy didn't function, really. That's why Stalinism had to live all the time through an emergency state. Stalinism is for me precisely the failure of bureaucracy. What does this mean for our world today? What happened in Greece? How did we end up where we are today? And it's a very sad thing, where are we? This is maybe the best indication of the confusion of our predicament. If you want today a minimal series of measures which, at least in some sense, they serve workers' interests, students, and so on. Usually, it's quite often right-wing populist regimes who are the only ones who dare to do this. For example, in Poland, where you have the Kaczynski brother, Jan Kaczynski, one of the two, the other died, the de facto ruler of Poland. You know that now they enacted incredible set of reforms. They lowered retirement age, made it easier for students to get loans and so on, healthcare and all that. Only a radically right-wing nationalist government can do this. And on the opposite, isn't it sad that if you want the toughest austerity measures, the best one to do it is a radical left party in power? Just imagine if in Greece, conservatives, New Democracy, were to remain in power. Syriza in opposition would have probably organized massive demonstrations and so on. With Syriza doing the austerity measures, the demoralization is total. So what went wrong? I think that again, that great disappointment, you remember, on one day 2 years ago when Syriza won the referendum, surprisingly, for themselves. I know from Varoufakis that Tsipras was totally shocked. He wanted honorably to lose the referendum. They won the referendum, literally 1 day later they capitulated. I don't blame them. I'm not saying traitors and so on. It's a real difficulty of the left today. Again, the difficulty of the day after. Okay, you triumph, referendum, but what to do the next day? So there is a narrative now emerging about Greece. The idea is that when Syriza was approaching power, the Tsipras leadership made a series of decisions not only about the political party line, but also about the type of party they needed. They advocated the transformation of Syriza from a coalition of disparate organizations and civil movements into a unified, centralized party. The great number of members of its central committee made it sure that de facto decisions were made in advance in a narrow, informal circle around Tsipras, the so-called para-center of power. So, it's easy then to claim that the problem of Syriza was that it became an alienated party elite running the state and that it lost contact with its social base, with civil movements, trade unions, protest movements, and so on and so on. And then the obvious solution is we should reunite this basis in popular movements. But I think that this analysis is totally misleading. Where Syriza failed is not in simply accepting the logic of state and abandoning its roots in civil movements, but to find a new way how to reorganize the state. It's not enough to say we have to keep always the pressure of the people, presence of grassroots organizations, and so on and so on. Yes, but what does this mean for the state itself? How to reinvent the state itself? Because again, as all great revolutionaries, from Robespierre to Lenin and Trotsky, knew very well, you cannot maintain a permanent emergency state. Well, people have an attitude of permanent mobilization, we are always active, and so on and so on and so on. Again, the problem is how to do it when things return to normal, when people get tired of being permanently mobilized. Then you need, maybe not the state, we have it, but you need some alienated mechanisms, and I'm not afraid of liking them. Listen, now I will make a personal confession for which some of you will probably want to lynch me. Can you imagine me living in a small community where every afternoon we have to debate how we distribute water, how we how we do the kindergarten, care for the children, how this, how that? It would be hell for me. I want to live in peace. I want I want to live my life of reading books, watching movies, writing about them. And I simply want an efficient, invisible mechanism to take care of all that. And I don't think there is anything bourgeois or whatever in this. The challenge is to build this in a different way, outside the scope of capitalism and so on and so on. I will even go a step further here when we talk about popular pressure, popular mobilization. The long history of universal suffrage in the West shows that vast majority of the people is, as a rule, passive, caught in the inertia of survival, not ready to be mobilized for some cause. That's why every radical movement is always constrained to a vanguard minority. And in order to gain hegemony, it has to wait patiently for a crisis, usually war, which provides a narrow window of opportunity. In such moments, an authentic vanguard can seize the day, mobilize the people, and take over. And communists here, and I'm not criticizing them, I admire them, were always utterly non-dogmatic here, ready to parasitize on another issue. Remember that October Revolution gained support not with we want socialism, but with land and peace. Chinese Communist Party, its slogan was national liberation and unity against corruption. So communists were always aware that mobilization will be soon over, and they were carefully preparing the power apparatus to keep them in power at that moment. So this betrays another big problem of the Western Marxism. Where is the revolutionary subject? How is it that the working class does not complete the passage, as we say in Hegelian terms, from in itself to for itself? How is it that it doesn't constitute itself as a revolutionary agent? This is why, a very vicious remark, all Marxists really like very much psychoanalysis. Why? They claim we have the best theory that explains economic crisis and so on. But then this theory predicted the emergence of proletariat as a revolutionary agent, and then when you ask them, the communists, I'm one of them by the way, when you ask them, but why is there no revolution? They say, to explain this we need psychoanalysis, to describe the deep manipulation and so on, whatever. For this reason, Western Marxism was also all the time in search of other social agents which could play the role of the revolutionary agent. Students, third world peasants, intellectuals even. And I think this is the lowest point, with all my support for refugees. This is why I find this horrible. Some of the leftists celebrate refugees. Why? Their idea is this one. We have good revolutionary theory. We just don't have a revolutionary agent. Maybe if we import refugees, they will fill in this gap and we will be able to make a revolution in Western Europe with enough refugees. I find this obscene. It means like outsourcing the revolutionary subject. You know, we don't have a revolutionary subject, we will import it. Because of this situation, we are today in a unique predicament, which is really tragic. Namely, let me return to Marx. Marxism was right about the so-called final crisis of capitalism. We are clearly entering it today, I claim. If you look at the signs, all the problems we're encountering, ecology, refugees, biogenetics, financial capital, and so on and so on. My God, even official ideologists like whom I really hate. I think they're more dangerous than Trump even. These pseudo-progressive liberal corporate leaders like, Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, and so on. This is the big slogan today. Capitalism is disappearing, and so on. They are right. But you know where Marxism obviously went wrong? The idea of Marxism was that when capitalism will be disintegrating, there will be another agent waiting to take over and bring capitalism to the higher stage. But today, and this was unthinkable for Marx, we only have disintegration, but no progressive force taking it over. Or to put it in another way, on the one hand, and this is the tragic split, on the one hand we have all these protest movements against capitalism, against neocolonialism, against precarious workers, and so on and so on, or protesting, what call it when you don't have jobs, joblessness. Sorry? Yeah. But you know what's so sad here? First, let me ask you a common sense question. I never understood it. Why are people afraid of robotization, that it will take them their jobs? Isn't this wonderful? We'll have to work less. Isn't this shows how deeply perverted our universe? Instead of saying, fine, work less, we see in this the extreme panic. Oh my God, we will lose our jobs. This is a very sad sign, which shows that the left really doesn't have a vision. So again, at the same time that we have all these protest movements, they were described at different levels, and these descriptions are way too naive. I don't trust them, but nonetheless, like Paul Mason, Jeremiah Rifkin, and so on, they describe how capitalism is reaching its end. How through digitalization, market economy can no longer dominate the entire production, and so on and so on. But so really, we can see in these processes of digitalization, automatization, already the roots of a post-capitalist world. But no link between this and most, at least, of the protest movements. So, let me quote you a German sociologist who wrote a wonderful collection of essays called How Will Capitalism End? Wolfgang Streeck, with two E's. Is it translated into Spanish? It's worth reading. Here is a quote from him. It is a Marxist, or better, modernist prejudice that capitalism as a historical epoch will end only when a new, better society is in sight, and a revolutionary subject ready to implement it for the advancement of mankind. This presupposes a degree of political control over our common fate, of which we cannot even dream after the destruction of collective agency. And indeed, the hope for it in the neoliberal globalist revolution. So again, the thesis of Streeck is, yes, capitalism is disintegrating, but according to Marxist doxa, this disintegration should be the very moment of the rise of a new revolutionary subject, which doesn't happen. I'm not saying this is a spontaneous process. The whole effort of today's ideology goes into what? How does ideology today function? It appears precisely as its opposite, as a radical critique of ideological utopias. I think that the predominant ideology today is not a positive vision of some utopian future, but a cynical resignation, an acceptance of how the world really is. The acceptance accompanied by a warning that if we want to change the world too much, only a totalitarian horror can be the final result. So, every vision of another world is dismissed as ideology. Alain Badiou put it in a wonderful and precise way. He wrote that the main function of ideological censorship today is not to crush actual resistance. This is the job of repressive state apparatuses, but to crush hope, to immediately denounce every critical project as opening a path at the end of which there is always something like Gulag. And this, let's call it post-ideological ideology, ideology whose entire identity is based on denouncing every progressive hope as ideology. This is how ideology functions today. And this functioning of ideology also accounts for some strange events taking place today. What do I mean by this? An old Chinese curse is, it's not really Chinese, it's just some Englishman, I spoke with my Chinese friends, some Englishman claimed that he heard it in China, but nobody knows about this in China, okay? It's that when you really hate someone, you tell him, may you live in interesting times. Because interesting times are, of course, the times of troubles, confusion, and suffering. And it seems that in some of our democratic countries, we are really witnessing now a strange phenomenon which proves that we live in interesting times. Did you notice how, for example, apropos Macron in France, a candidate emerges and wins elections as it were from nowhere, in a moment of confusion, building a movement around his name. Both Berlusconi and Macron exploded like this. But
excuse me, let me catch my breath for a second. It's been a long while since I've done this. And I'm extremely anxious,
kind of
and I
engagement
haven't slept at all last night.
We should never forget that such figures explode with the full support of social and economic establishment.
This was supposed to be my big
Their
comeback
function
stream,
is precisely to obfuscate,
Lacanian 2.0,
mystify,
or explain how I
actual
left the
social
soap dams.
antagonisms. People are magically united against
And
some
the
demonized
entire day was thinking of
fascist
postponing
threat.
it. But I'm like, I've done this way too
This
many
weird
times,
phenomenon
and
is, I think, one of the
people
visible
will get bored of it.
effects of the
Because
long-term
I do
prearrangement
the
of
same.
the political
Oh, the background
space
music is
in
really loud. Wait, let me fix
Europe.
this.
Today, we no longer have.
Thank
two
you,
big
Android.
parties.
This is gonna be the new styling. I didn't used to let my hair loose very much, or use eyeshadow, and whatever else I'm wearing. What is it called? Eye pencil or whatever. Yeah, I'm going for a more femme look because I've never in my life liked anything mask. So I'm embracing my non-manly nature. Thank you. I'm really sorry. I've been an asshole. I haven't been answering your Discord messages, Androider. Can you hear me now? By the way, is everything all right? I should probably completely turn it off and completely close the Chrome window because everything is lagging on my end. Am I dropping frames on my laptop on the second screen? I'm dropping every frame. I don't know. Oh, this seems to be getting better now. Just a slight delay. Yeah, the only thing I can have open on this computer while streaming is Chatterino, and that's probably too much. Yeah. Well, it says 35% CPU, but something's taking up the rest, clearly. Yeah, Lacanian and technical issues. Name a better duo? What's the expression? Name a more iconic duo. Jesus, I can't fucking think. More iconic, yes. Shameless plug if you like this. It's a Nightbot. I'd forgotten I'd installed this. You deserted social fascism? Yup. I got extremely tired of it, and once I get a little bit more energy, I will talk about that because that's the theme of today's stream. A better geoism? Base? Yeah. What else is here? Okay. Can you give me some feedback on how's it coming up on your end? I'm really anxious about the technical aspect. It's ridiculous because literally everybody and their grandmother can fucking stream, but I haven't been able to. I don't know about any philosophy. Well, stick around. Stick around long enough, there might be some philosophy streams coming up. We shall see. Audio is good. Great video. Yeah, I got a C920. And actually the video used to be better than this. I don't know how anything works. Apparently Logitech software somehow connects to OBS. Like what I've been doing is, so if I open OBS and I haven't opened Logitech Capture before, the quality is shit. I have no idea what's happening. And so I open Logitech Capture, and then I close it, and then I open OBS, and the quality is better. But today is just a little off, even though I've got the exact same lighting. I've got a diffuser and the ring light too. Yeah, I was hoping to not have any more issues, which is why I bought the webcam. And it certainly looks better, but yeah, I'm still really without a laptop of one's own, as Virginia Woolf would put it. My grandma can stream, she's dead. Yeah. R.I.P. I guess. I guess that might be worse than not being able to stream, being dead. It feels like forever ago you just wanted to debate Sargon. Oh, my sweet summer child. Of course I didn't just want to debate Sargon. I wanted to use it as an opportunity to get up and running and streaming, and I just found an in on the streaming world. We've been in the last time I spoke to him, I remember, was there was this panel that Destiny went to a couple of months ago with Riley, I think. God, I hate Riley now. We should get into that. Oh God, am I gonna be a drama? Am I gonna be a drama streamer? Yeah, he was with Riley and Jangles, I think. It was an interesting panel. And Sargon was in chat, and we said we'd talk over Discord, but I never checked Discord. Although I probably should start at this point. It's like a lifetime ago. Yeah, I know, right? Although, to be fair, I also dislike RGR. Yeah, audio is lagging. Fuck me. Yeah. Is the video at least coming? You know, is it flowing smoothly? Is it like what's going on? The IRL panel. That must have been it. Yeah, we're chatting with Sargon back then. I mean, look, once I get this up and running, and I'll see what kind of content I feel like doing. But once I get this up and running, I'll pursue it. I don't think I would object to doing debates. I don't see any reason to. But I think I need to get on my feet a little bit. Because here's the thing, I don't want every stream to be a fucking event. I want to build somewhat of a routine, and, you know, you can tune in when you want to tune in, right? That's sort of what I'm going for. Because so far I've streamed like, what? Is this the fourth time? Is this the fourth time?
I think so.
Yeah. Yeah, and every time it's a fucking event, which is ridiculous and screams amateurism. So yeah, I need to get into a routine. Video is good, it's good, great video, great, fascinating. Great. So, okay, here's what's been going on. This feels like forever ago. Is it just me, or does time pass? So, to me it feels like when you're doing stuff, time passes extremely slow, right? But when you're not doing anything and you're depressed, it's just, I mean, I'm not saying anything particularly novel here, but every day does blend into the next. And it's like, wait, I talked to you 2 months ago? I thought it was like last week. So here's what happened. So, my Mac broke down. Was it like 2 days after my first stream? Right? So, I was a fucking moron, and this is gonna be a quick recap, because at this point, this is not a politics stream, it's not a philosophy stream, it's become a technical issues stream, me complaining about my technical issues. So, what happened is, I was going to install an update to Big Sur. And I fucked it up. And I don't know, this apparently triggered all sorts of latent issues, which was like hard drive failure issues, or SSD or whatever. What else was it? The screen stopped working. Oh, by the way, big shout out to White Nervosa, who I did not know back then, but thanks to Mythaldo, who is probably not here. He's been missing lately, I don't know where he is. And I'm out of the mod. Anywho, I'm having trouble donating through Streamlabs. Oh, you wanna donate, that's so sweet. Can you explain what the trouble is? Because I have been having trouble with my PayPal account. Apparently it's been restricted, and I'm going to email them about that. Some rando donated, like, I don't know, 5 months ago. I never saw it. I don't know if they donated through Streamlabs or anything. Wait, this is not working. Wait a second. Why is the Nightbot command not working? Let me give you the Discord invite. I wish I didn't get a Mac. I don't know how to use it, and I've had it for 2 years. Is it really that hard? I don't know. It's been I don't like going back to Windows after Mac. But we'll get to that. So, pay account receipt. Yeah, fuck me. Yeah. What are there other ways for you to, yes, my PayPal account is restricted. So yeah, some weirdo that I have no idea what that is. My voice sounds funny, Robot Fuzzy, fuck me. Yeah, I don't know what to do about this. It's probably because I'm opening Discord right now. Just hang on for 5 seconds. Oh, no, fuck this. No, I'm gonna do it through my phone. I'm actually monitoring my stream through my phone because, yeah, so this laptop does not have NVENC or hardware encoding, so I'm using CPU. So what's going on is, again, anything else I do besides stream like my face and have chat open is completely slowing it down. And of course, Discord did not close because Discord is being Discord. Yeah, there's really not much else I can close to make my CPU take less. Okay, back to normal. That's great.
Next week, no.
Yeah. I'm gonna get to that. I'm just gonna forward the Discord link. Just 1 second to who was it? Champagne Brochelist. Wait 1 second. God damn. How do I still not know how to use Discord at this point? Invite members. It's literally right fucking there. And here we go. Let me see. Honestly, I'm feeling quite a bit better now that I've started talking. I was pretty anxious before. I couldn't press the fucking button to show my fucking face. Anyway, here's the Discord link because Nightbot is not working. Or I haven't input a command. I don't fucking know. So yeah, some random donated to my PayPal account. Not at the time where I was streaming or begging for money. So I don't know. Did I get caught up in some money laundering scheme? I have no idea. Because my account has been restricted either recently or since then. So I've been looking into that. Is there another way that people can change the link to donations without doxing myself? Is anybody aware of any other payment methods? Yeah. So meanwhile, where was I? Right.
Laptop broke down.
Yeah, so my Mac broke down. And started showing all sorts of, can you get donations through Streamlabs? No, apparently not. I wasn't sure if it would accept donations, but I can't send any money. So I need to figure out some alternative way. Okay, honey, wait. Anyway, do me a favor. Can you, while I'm streaming, can you please go online and, on what computer? Anyway, can you try and go online and figure out maybe some other way we can set up a link? I was hoping this wouldn't be an issue, but unlucky.
Phone?
Yeah, the phone is not a great idea. PayPal? Yeah, that's the thing. Again, like, I don't want to dox myself. And I would, if I start opening shit here, it's going to do the robot voice thing again, so I'm gonna have to look it up on my phone. Make a second PayPal. This is already my second PayPal, supposedly my business account. So I was considering this, but I wasn't certain if I was gonna stream today. And I was considering doing this before starting stream, but it took a while to set it up. So yeah, I didn't get the time to do that. I was hoping this wouldn't be an issue and the money would be. I don't know. Um, Alternative to PayPal for Twitch donations? I don't fucking know. To PayPal for Twitch donations. Hopefully, we're not going to be this technologically restricted next week. And I'll be able to actually look at the camera while I'm looking for shit and maybe show it on stream. I'll get to that. Just wait a sec. Start streaming. Yeah, I'm probably not going to stream Elements. I'm not in the US, so I can't use any Cash Apps, all that jazz.
I doubt you're gonna be able to set
Yeah, I'm not gonna be able to set it up now. However, if you want to donate, you can DM me afterwards. I don't know. I'm fucking desperate. Anywho, we're gonna do more streams. You'll hopefully. Anywho, so MacBook broke down. And I didn't know the extent. Oh, yeah, shout out to White Nervosa. That's where I was left. Shout out to White Nervosa, whom didn't know me then. But after Mythaldu told her to help me, she immediately just DM'd me and tried, like, for days to fix my broken MacBook while my broken MacBook kept breaking down even further. It was like some kind of a chain reaction, and then it just wouldn't open the screen or whatever. But she tried, and she's a really cool person. Anywho, so after that, I did a couple of streams on this laptop, which is my one of my best friends' laptops. Here's the room. Now they're my roommate. Or do you prefer it or they?
I'm fine with either.
All right. And so,
You can use Nico, by the way, if you want it.
have you tried calling Apple? So, I was pondering between going to Apple, which would definitely lose my data, and I would probably pay like more than $500, or going to a local repair shop, which supposedly was guaranteed a fast service. That's what it advertised, but apparently not. And so I chose the latter after deliberating for like 5 months. And so I didn't have any spare money to fix it. And so I sat on it. And for about 5 months, I was depressed quite heavily. Didn't really get out of bed. I was taking my stimulants and then playing chess all day because I found a new obsession, which was learning and playing chess. And now I know how to play chess pretty well, which is nice. It's a nice skill to have. Yes, it was all day on my phone. I was doing nothing else. Some Twitter, mostly that. Anyway, at some point, after my parents told me, just go ahead and get it fixed and we'll see what we can do. So I took it to the local repair shop, hoping that it would get repaired soon and I would maybe not lose my data. However, this took about 2 months, and after 2 months, and after we've been deliberating on what they're going to fix, and how much it's gonna cost for like weeks, they just called me one morning and told me, yeah, that thing is unfixable. It's garbage. Just throw it away. Don't pay us any money. We can't fix it. Yeah, so that's that. The MacBook's dead. And to think that I wanted to update to upgrade to Big Sur precisely because there were some apps that I wanted to run to help the stream that did not run on Mac OS Mojave. How's that for irony, I guess? Anywho, I don't get how trying to update would cause all these problems. Well, it didn't really cause all of these problems. Apparently, they were latently existing in the MacBook. I think I must have gotten like one of these really bad models because I've had issues with it before. Plus, I got the base model because I'm poor, and that had like 128 gigs of storage. And I of course, I completely, like, anything I tried to do was constantly throttled by the RAM overflowing into swap memory, and then my disk being constantly full and me ignoring all the warnings. So I'm sure that must have played a part. I don't know about the screen. The screen had malfunctions before, and I took it to Apple and they repaired it for free because apparently it was dysfunctional model. But I don't fucking know. Anyway, I'm done with this MacBook. At any rate, so through various circumstances, I ended up living with one of my best friends. This is the same house, but it's a different room that I was in. I used to be in my bedroom. This is now the living room. Nothing existed here before my roommate came in. Right? It's a long, complicated story. This was barely a house. Depression will do that, I guess. Sometimes it takes the other out. At any rate, so my friend moving in, along with some other developments, kind of helped get me out of this depressive episode. And I had access to a computer, which meant I could, I got a gig that got me like some $300. That's how I bought the camera, by the way. So yeah, I kind of, I was a little better, and I'm like, okay, I'm finishing college this year. I have to. This is the 6th year, because for the past, it's a tradition here to finish at like 7 years. This is how Greek students do it, but I was never sort of like that. I was depressed for the last 1.5 years, so I wasn't really participating at all. And now I'm back on that, and I'm like, okay, it's time to start the stream again. There's a computer here. So we played around a bit, and I'm like, okay, I can't deal with, using my phone as a camera anymore. That cannot happen. And so I bought the webcam, and the rest, I guess, is history. But this laptop is not capable of running a decent stream, I'm afraid. Unless, again, it's just me showing my face and talking like I'm doing now and going to be doing for the rest of this stream. You're not going to see anything else other than my face. I'm only going to get FAFSA money? I'm not. What is FAFSA? Anywho, so yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now. And I kind of sort of quit smoking and mostly vaping. We don't have, I can't find nicotine salts easily here. Fast-paced like assistance money for school in the U.S. Fun. Assistance money for school in the U.S. Huh. But do you, pay it back? I'm only familiar with predatory student loans. Assistance money sounds more like, I don't know, Finland or the Netherlands. I'm not that familiar, to be honest. I've also been generally frustrated with academia in general. Um, I don't know. Like at this point, I feel like whatever thing I'm interested in, once I'm forced to do it for university, it's just not interesting anymore. Suddenly, and I'm like, I don't want to do this for the next 6 years. So we're gonna figure out what to do. 2800. No, you don't. It's just just a grant, right? Uh, a year or a month? It's a month. That's like PhD salary, right? Anywho, that's a year. Oh, per semester. Yeah, I mean, it's some money. It's fun. Um, I was always just above the level of poor that would get you assistance money. Yeah. Yeah, and so today, like, I hadn't refilled my prescription for my stimulant, which is Concerta, um, and for a month. So I was very enthusiastic to get my hands on it, as you can imagine. And so I didn't sleep last night, and I am extremely tired right now. And yeah, I was thinking of not doing it, but I did it anyway because I'm like, okay, this can't I can't keep postponing streams. This has to be routine. Um, and so, and this will finish the chapter of technical issues, which is last. Yes. So there's another friend of ours who will be coming every week for a couple of days because they also study here, but they don't live here. And they have a laptop that is capable of running a proper stream. So the plan is that I'm going to schedule it in such a way that I can use their laptop and stream at least once a week, hopefully, and we'll see about more than that. Yes, I can run a proper stream because I can't really do much other than talk here. I would imagine this is probably gonna be like Monday night or Tuesday night for me. I suppose it's gonna be like, I don't know, again around 5 p.m. EST. Probably. We'll see. Get me the flavor? Shot, whatever. So, what's been going on with you lately, chat? Give me a second to just refill this. The pandemic has helped me so much. I had like no money because of COVID CARES Act. I got around 5K in grants. That's boggers. New Trash Panda book. It's called Enjoy Your Yeah. I know that book. I haven't read it, but it sounds fun. 3 weeks into university as a freshman. Wow. That sounds fun. I remember those days when we were still young and hopeful. Whatever. I hope you have fun. So, ideology-wise, can you give me a coffee? So, ideology-wise, where do I stand right now? So my views haven't been fully fleshed out. So I can't really give nor am I sure that I will be able to give a full account of exactly what I believe and coherent worldview. But even before I broke with sock Twitter, um, I had a lot of. So okay, ever since, I'm not gonna go through my entire ideological journey, but even when I used to be a libertarian back at some point, although I wasn't a reactionary, I was always very progressive, but I was like a capitalist. I did used to, I did still read philosophy, and I went to like philosophy conferences and stuff, and hung around with people who would probably identify as like some flavor of anarchist. So like a Georgist. I mean, I like Georgism, but I mean, I would like that if that were to happen, but I'll explain later kind of where I stand. So what was I saying now? Yeah, so even back then, I would hang out with like all these, and I still do, all these philosophy people who were farther to the left of me, economically speaking or fiscally. And I always had this like, okay, so it seems like even back when I gave like a speech at a conference on Lacan when it was first getting into Lacan, I think I probably was some flavor of libertarian back then, still. And yeah, like I picked up anti-Oedipus like back then. Um, because that brand of leftist sort of philosophy did appeal to me because it wasn't simplistic, it wasn't sloganeering, it wasn't reductionist, it wasn't populist, but rather it was a complexification of the world rather than a simplification. I'm always kind of drawn to that. Which is why I prefer the post-structuralists, reading post-structuralists rather than reading modernist thinkers. Because they usually, I don't know, I haven't read that many modernist thinkers. I could be wrong about this. But I do like the complexity. I don't understand these people who say life is simple, Like, I really don't think that's the case. I saw you say on Twitter that morality isn't real. What does that mean? When you said it was a scam, I did say it was a scam. That I did say. Oh boy, I don't know if we're going to get into this tonight. As a Marxist, I like Georgism, but I don't think it goes far enough. That's sort of where I'm at. I like Georgism. I mean, okay, look. So, where do I begin with this? So I've had a lot of thoughts. What I'm trying to get at here, laboriously, is that whatever my stated ideological stance at the time, I always explore other avenues, right? And there's always stuff in the back of my mind that I'm sort of working through, and like someday I'm like, okay, I'm convinced now, because I'll mull over arguments and try to, argue with myself and like, okay, find resources on it. I'm like, okay, does this make any sense? Let's go further. I mean, some things I'll dismiss offhand, but obviously there's potential for something interesting. I'll try and chase it. But I won't really claim a position that I don't feel like I can capably defend. Right? That's sort of when I more officially adopt a position, when I feel somewhat comfortable defending it. Right? And when I've seen enough of the arguments or the counter arguments to be certain that I don't want to say I kind of refute them, but like move forward from that. So with software, so I always did have some anarchistic tendencies, hence why I was a libertarian, although I was extremely naive about capitalism. How I got into social democracy is odd because it was a mix of, getting into Vosh, of going from liberal to market socialist, at first with co-ops, then there was the big sock Twitter boom with Liz and Medlock, and then Matt Brunig and the wealth funds and the policy shit, which I mean now I'm a little bit I don't know why I got that interested in policies. Like right now, I'm definitely bored by it at this point. But at some point, I was really into that, which I think is probably a function of like my insecurity. Like this is something I can defend, right? And I think this is probably why sock Twitter or more liberal Twitter or people like SDL and other people are so very yeah, I miss Liz too. Yeah, maybe she'll come back. Who knows? I'm sure she's kept like one of her 10 profiles available to be reactivated if she wants. Let's hope. So yeah, I think there's this type of obsession with like data and this sort of naive empirics, which was one of the things that made me quite tired of that part of Twitter, and policy and that sort of thing. I think they need to be taken seriously, right? Like, okay, look, you can't refute this. I've got the data. You're wrong. Like, it gives you a leg to stand on, right? SDL is just a recreation of Edward Bernstein. Okay, look, so I had a conversation on Twitter with SDL a while ago. I think I might have mentioned something. I think it was something about precisely naive empiricism. It was like a small thread. And to their credit, SDL, and not to my credit, to their credit, SDL did message me privately instead of dunking on me. And I think they asked for more elaborations on that. And I'm more because I had a lot of things going on, like finals and stuff, and I completely forgot about it. I should probably get back to them at some point. But who knows? There's hope for everyone. I'm blocked based still on Twitter. Some really funny stuff on Twitter. I'm blocked too. I'm horrible at understanding basic stuff in math, so I enjoy what you say more than SDL. Yeah, I mean, the thing about content like that is that at some point, like, first of all, like, besides the criticism of naive empirics, are people, like, genuinely like, is data what convinces people? Doesn't that seem a little bit naive to you? Like, is it just me? So, like, okay, I think data can be useful in convincing someone who's more of a fence sitter, someone who's more on the apolitical side. Maybe they've got a little bit of passive bigotry because of how they grew up, etc., etc. Like your mother, your uncle, whatever. These people, if they're well-meaning, right, I think they can be convinced by data. But people who are committed to a set of beliefs and they've set up like their entire neuroses around that, they don't give a fuck, clearly. Like, they would have looked it up. Like, how did I get out of libertarianism? I looked it up. I saw that it doesn't work, that it's bullshit. Because I was, at least trying to see, like, does what I'm saying make any fucking sense? And it didn't. So I'm like, okay, I've got to leave this behind. But a lot of it is just, we have to admit that, like, so many lefties are fucking insufferable, especially here. But I don't know. At this point, I don't think it's just Greece anymore. I'm getting back to that ContraPoints video where she was like, well, okay, 99% of feminism is shit because 99% of everything is shit. And that's sort of how I feel about leftists and anarchists at this point. I'm trying not to dismiss stuff because there's a lot of people who don't know what the fuck they're talking about. What do you think of unlearning economics? So I haven't interacted with them lately. I think they follow me too. They're a cool guy. I'm still not. Are they a guy? I think. I'm not entirely sure. They're a cool person at any rate. I'm not entirely sure where they stand politically. I think at some point they said they were more radical than the Sogdems, but I never really got a feel for. Yeah, I think they were leaning more libertarian socialist, or although that term, like, I don't know what it means anymore. Yeah, it's not clear to me, but I'm sure they know a lot about economics. I mean, I can't judge, but they probably have PG. I haven't seen their latest video. What was it? Do you remember? I think there was a video that we wanted to check out from a learning economics, but we never did.
Was it something about
This is interesting, huh?
Pinker?
Yeah. So they made a video on Steven Pinker, and I hate that motherfucker so much. And he's blocked me on Twitter too. I've never interacted with him. He has like block lists or something. But God, I hate Steven Pinker so fucking much. He's like the poster boy for exactly what I hate about my colleagues' physics. I study physics, by the way. And he's exactly what I hate about the mentality that's just fucking everywhere in science today. And I am afraid that the many times praised Richard Feynman might have started this. I don't know. I've heard this somewhere. Libertarian socialist means you watch Vosh. Yeah, at this point, that's probably what it means. I mean, what does Vosh identify at this point? I have no clue. You know, what did he just admit? He's basically, is he still going through with the whole I'm a libertarian socialist? Or I hope he still doesn't call himself an anarchist. Steven, things are better things are better than they used to be, so don't complain. Thinker. Yeah. First of all, yeah, I don't take kindly to anyone who tells me not to complain, because I love to complain all the time. Did you like Contra's Envy video? Yeah, so I did like most of it. Are you getting flickering on the screen? I think I just noticed something. Yeah, so I liked most of it. I was really, really eagerly awaiting it. I think I'm the only person in Theory Twitter who actually really likes Contra. I don't know. I don't know why people who sort of read the same stuff as me and think in the same vein as me are sort of indifferent towards Contra, or a little bit. They don't run around canceling her or anything, but they're very lukewarm about her. I really like her. I consider her like, sort of one of us. I think she's watched a little bit too much Vosh in the last year, I'm afraid. But I think she'll get around. I think she's reading Deleuze right now, the masochism book. And she's also reading like Lucie Irigaray, who is like this obscure Lacanian, or post-Lacanian, I guess, feminist. So she's going in deep. I don't know where she's gonna go with that. You like Liv's response? Yeah. Liv's response was fantastic. Yeah, I loved it.
The evil shape though.
Yeah. So, yeah, Contra just really, really needs to stop with the human nature stuff. It's getting a little bit, or very annoying. I don't know what the point is. I don't know why she brings up Freud. She brings up Nietzsche. Is it really necessary to say that envy is a part of humanity? After all this, does this seem to be coherent? And yeah, like Liv hit precisely the points that I took issue with, which is human nature, overemphasizing that instead of envy and ressentiment being a particular configuration or transmutation of the will to power under specific social circumstances, etc. And what else was it? Right, and towards the end, yeah, that Martin Luther King quote was completely off the mark. It did feel like she misunderstood the concept of will to power a little bit, and I think Liv did a great job of explaining it. I don't know. It's just Deleuze's reading. Am I only reading Nietzsche through Deleuze? I've sort of rediscovered Nietzsche lately, actually. And by lately, I do mean the last 3 months, and I've been sort of been on a binge reading Nietzsche. And this is probably like the third time. This is usually the third time's the magic number. I hope there's more readings. But this time, because I hadn't read him in a while, it's like, holy shit. The entirety of postmodernism is all fucking laid out here. It's fucking insane, right? You're looking at it, and it feels like, and Nico said this, it's like, it's like Nietzsche gave, each postmodernist philosopher like a paragraph and told them, just develop your entire philosophy on that paragraph, right? It's insane. Like, even Lacan, which is not someone who you usually associate with Nietzsche, there was this, can you bring me the book?
Ahead of you.
Yeah. There was a really good book I read, but unfortunately it's not available in English. I rarely read books by Greek authors, but this guy is he's a guy we know from philosophy seminars and stuff, and the book was really, really good. And it's called Stirner, Nietzsche, Foucault, and it hasn't been translated, unfortunately. But it was really, really good. So I've also been getting into Stirner, which is somewhere here. Yeah. What is he saying? Right, there was this, and so he mentions. No, I don't want this one. I want the.
I know, I haven't found it yet. So
There's this lesser known, well, not book. It's a collection of. I think it was notes from lectures that he gave relatively early on in his career. It was like 2 students just taking notes. There was nobody else in the classroom. What was it called? I think it's something about rhetoric. And if I'm reading this, and it's literally like I'm reading Lacan, where it's like he's completely figured out how language works and structures the unconscious. It's insane. I'm not sure exactly. I think it's something about rhetoric and their lectures. Yeah, I'm not sure I'm gonna find this right now, but also that line from Twilight of the Idols, I don't think we'll ever get rid of God if we don't get rid of grammar. Like, holy shit. It feels like the Contra has foreclosed certain conclusions and possibilities, but I think it's possible for her to change. Yeah, I think so too. I think she's gotten a little too frustrated and jaded with the online left. And again, I think she probably watched a little too much of Watch. And yeah, she's taking the more moderate side. It's a little bit weird to me how she went from Nietzsche and Ressentiment to proposing moderate reformist solution. Like, I don't see how there's a line there. Although it is true that a lot of politics is driven from resentment. She wasn't wrong about that. And surely a lot of revolutionary fantasies, the ones that imagine a grand revolution, definitely stem from some type of neuroses. They're not really sober political analyses. So that's, I think, on point, but I think she's still captured in this state of mind that I've coined. I don't know if there's another word for this. I've sort of coined it state-like thinking, and I'll probably develop this a little bit further. It's in bits and pieces in my mind, but it's basically the reason, or what this realization is what made me jump ship from the SOC Dems, basically. which is and Doe has talked about this a lot, right? The inability to imagine politics outside the state. Um, but the key here is it's not, even if someone says, okay, so this is the ideal communist society, and this is how we're gonna live, and people ask them questions and say, okay, how is this gonna be done? How is the other thing gonna be done? And the answer, they have an answer, right? And this is some kind of ideal society that they're proposing, supposedly without a state. I still consider this to fully be within what I would call state-like thinking. And this seems very, very prevalent in online discourse and extremely hard to escape mentally. Because you've blocked a lot of avenues and a lot of sorts of parts of ideologies because you've seen, again, a lot of representatives of that ideology still speaking in that same manner and still being in the process of proposing societies, right? And this is my design. And like, this is my design, right? Like, this is how this is gonna work. This is how. And I mean, you are called to answer that. There was this tweet by Avery, Femboy Philosophy, a month ago or so, where he said something along the lines of, "Oh, when you tell an anarchist that when you ask an anarchist how will this work, and they end up describing a state." Now he's taking a dig at anarchists, right? But his point is astute without him understanding it, of course. Well, the point is that the question presupposes, and that's what I quote tweeted. The question presupposes the answer. Like, once you ask someone what the society is supposed to look like, they can only think like a state, right? Let me read chat a little bit. I don't know anything about postmodernism. Only stuff conservatives have said about, like, postmodernism. See, logic is really use logic. This is conservatives and also probably Rem. What am I gonna do with a moral realist? Jesus fuck. This Rem Vosh debate that's still fucking kicking. That was a disaster. Now everyone who hates Vosh has become a moral realist because they're very convinced that Vosh doesn't know what he's talking about, and Rem knows what he's talking about because he's a philosophy PhD, so clearly he's correct. To be clear, I don't think that Vosh knew what he was talking about, right? Obviously, like, he says it all the time. He means he doesn't read, right? But what he expressed was like basic post-Nietzschean realization, right? Like proto-Foucauldian whatever, truth is constructed by power, whatever, right? So it's jumbled, right? And it's messy and it's not very accurate, but it's nothing complete. It's not nuts, right? He's not like completely off the mark, but he's also coming, I think, from a standpoint that's more continental. Well, Rem was analytical, and he was trying to. I've been meaning to talk about this. I'm on a stream of thought. Anywho, I distinctly remember, and Rem did this in perspective, philosophy did this, and this made me dislike the both of them, because they come from a certain analytic background. They sort of shoehorned Vosh's position, which doesn't fit within the analytic paradigms, either as non-cognitivism or as, what's the other thing, error theory or whatever. It doesn't fit in these categories because these categories presuppose entire argumentative frameworks before that, and Vosh obviously has never heard of that before, but, Ram is like, oh, I know, like, okay, you're a moral error theorist, right? So now I'm going to use my prepared argument that I learned in university to strike you down. Like, okay, the companions in guilt. Okay, congrats. Like, fascinating. You just shoehorned him into a position that he doesn't even know what the fuck it is, right? And perspective philosophy sort of did the same thing, but I think you shoehorned him into non-cognitivism. I don't fucking know. I don't think Vosh versus Rem started the debate. I think Protestant ethics run deep in the analytical philosophy bloodline. and they require certain moral realism and empiricism. That's probably very likely, but I mean, that started the discourse on Twitter specifically, right? Probably. No, analytic philosophy obviously was always like that. And they do this thing, I hate this so much. They do this thing where they have this poll, and they'll say, look, you're, again, like, this fucking data mindset, you know, look, the philosophers disagree with you. Like, this is not, we're not debating fucking climate change. Like, this is philosophy. You know what? Okay, 60% of philosophers disagree with you. I don't give a shit. Like, what am I supposed to say to that, right? And the thing is, the poll is completely misleading because that is a poll that was taken entirely, I think, on analytical philosophy departments. And like, yeah, no shit, analytical philosophers are going to lean towards moral realism because, I don't know, they're probably the only ones who are still studying fucking metaethics. Right? 9 out of 10 philosophers recommend for Lacanian. I'm a Twitter lurker, but I'm glad to see we got everything running. Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad too. Let's hope it gets the setup gets a little bit better. But yeah, that's good too. If you can handle, or not handle, but if you can stand seeing my face for like 2 or 3 hours and not seeing anything on the screen, that will do. Let me read chat for a sec. Vosh comes off as a pseudo who word salads a shit to get off coordinates. He does do that a lot. But in that particular debate, I don't think he was in the wrong. I mean, okay, he was obviously out of his depth, but the positions he was giving weren't like anything fucking insane, you know? But I think, I don't know, and like people who don't like Vosh if just jumped on the moral realism train is really funny. State like thinking, so would that mean you can only talk about things you want in life and want in house? What? No, state like thinking, I'll elaborate on this, just wait a second. It reminds me of Zizek talking about how communism is a capitalist fantasy as capitalism without capital. I haven't actually seen that. I should probably at some point read Zizek's actual, you know, philosophical work, like The Sublime Object and other stuff like that. At least see how exactly it differs from Deleuze and those strands, which I've been much more into lately. And you know, Deleuze and Guattari leads you to like Tikkun and the Invisible Committee and stuff like that. Which is also very interesting. So I'm sort of in that communization current. I don't like calling myself that. I don't like calling myself a communist. I don't like calling myself an anarchist. Neither of these things. You know, I kind of call myself post-anarchist, but then everybody thinks that I'm like 100% a Sol Newman fan, and I'm not entirely sure that I agree with him. But let's just say I'm not really in the traditional anarchist sort of wave of thought. Like the collectivist anarchist, anarcho-communist, that's not really where I'm at. I think to a large extent, a lot of them might do what I'm talking about. I haven't read them, so I probably shouldn't be talking about this. But I've been reading some Stirner, and I do like him quite a bit. I'm also one of these people who do think Nietzsche was some flavor of anarchist. Not anarchist, again, as in like systematic anarchism, but more like anarchy, right? And I think, who was it? Emma Goldman? Who was it? Right. So it was Emma Goldman, I think, who was a fierce defender of Nietzsche in the anarchist tradition. And I think she said Nietzsche was an anarchist in the sense that every anarchist is an aristocrat. And I really like this conception of anarchism, or I think Deleuze would put it in a different way. It probably means something very different, but anywho, I like the phrase he uses, which is called crowned anarchy. I really like this because I do like the aesthetic of, I don't know, aristocracy and luxuriousness. No. Fucking Zizek roasts Stalinist dialectical materialism and parallax view, and I'm fucking here for it. Every anarchist is an aristocrat. Yeah, that's what Emma Goldman said. Famous anarchist, not coming out of my mouth. I mean, your name is Champagne Brocialist. You should be on board with this. There was a time where I was seriously considering as a name for my channel Champagne Socialist. Unironically. I'm considering politics revolving around a modifying version of the Badouian event in the Zizekyan Act. Did Doe delete its Twitter? Yes. From what I know, Doe will be taking a break. And I probably shouldn't say much more about this. It's going through some personal issues. Yeah. Where was I? Yeah, so before I really got into Deleuze, I remember picking up a couple of, not picking up, but like reading, or browsing through a couple of PDFs that were, Zizek's and Badiou's, this unholy alliance, where their politics stand. But I'm still not, I can't say I've understood where exactly they're going with that. Something about an ethics of the real. I mean, in the end, isn't Deleuzean ethics an ethics of the real? I wouldn't call it that, but I operate in many levels of irony. My username is a Hassan Roast. Oh, yeah, I don't really watch Hassan. I honestly, look, I watched Vosh, I watched a lot of Destiny. I never watched Hassan. I don't get the appeal. Don't tell him that, but a politics of impossibility. Do elaborate on this. I remember Rem trying to force Joe into a certain position in order to apply a butchered version of Wittgenstein argument against private language. Yes, this was probably the gender debate. I think Joe told me that it went rather fine, and it told me to watch it, which I half did. I watched the first part, and then I didn't watch the rest. I'm afraid. Or things about yourself. You can't say anything about others like I can't say I want everyone to be happy because I'm forcing my will onto others. Middle class worker, you're actually sort of close to what I'm talking about. All of these, I think at least, all of these conceptions that start a politics from an ideal society, well, it's done from the subjective position of a we, right? And I've also wanted to talk about this, and this has also been developing lately in my mind, especially in online discourse. We're always talking around or from this subjective we, right? Should we do this? Should we do that? Should we allow this? Is this moral? And there's something about this that really irks me. Who is we exactly? And I'm not saying that as, some radical, individualist, whatever, but like, this is almost deliberately vague. Like, who is we? And I think the reason that it's so vague, I don't think they're doing it consciously, but it's precisely the conditions of the discourse that don't really allow you many lines of flight from that. What I think is going on is I think in the aftermath of the biopolitical state, a politics is constructed not through consensus. A politics is constructed without the notion of conflict, right? This is also what state-like thinking sort of does in this kind of we. It's because we who are supposed to do that, right? We're all supposed to judge and have a common, ethical framework from which we judge something. And what this fails to understand I think, is fundamental asymmetries, right? Fundamental conflicts of interest, right? In which, if you take each particular side and try to see what's good for this side, right, or what's good for that, I think you'll find both positions fairly reasonable, but wait a minute, they're enemies, right? They contradict each other. So I think what is expected, for example, and this I think is a classic example, right? And this is one of the first things that got me to consider this, because I really like this example. I don't know if this is still the case in America or where it is exactly the case, or rather it's the opposite, right? So there is a place, I'm not sure if it's in the US or otherwise, where if you're in prison and you try to escape, you're not charged for escaping. I really love this. I think this gets it, right? I think this gets that conflict where they are not also expecting you as a prisoner to accept that you should stay there, right? They accept the conflict that yes, it is fully reasonable for you. We've put you into that situation, and it is fully reasonable for you to try to escape it. Our interests are different. We're going to try and catch you because our interest is to, make sure, that society functions or whatever, or, we have to protect society, whatever, or at least that's how we have to appear. That's our job. That's our interest. But we're not blaming you for your interests that ran contrary to us. Whereas, in this we, and in state-like thinking, I think there's precisely an erasure of those conflicts. And everyone is supposed to agree on this reasonable sense. So, in that sense, this sort of state-like politics, or this sort of we, would expect the person who gets imprisoned to accept their sentence as legitimate, right? I'm on the side of the state, right? We're all on the side of the state, and we're all collectively sort of running this. We're not, right? And Alyssa and Doe, I saw them say on Twitter that they privately joke that Vosh and others sort of LARP as EU bureaucrats, and that is so fucking true. That's also something that's been running through my head lately. And I know why they do this, right? I've been through that phase. I understand it, right? And it's really hard to think outside of that, right? Again, you want to be pragmatic, and pragmatic has become a fucking buzzword. But I don't think, this is completely without merit, but I think it's misdirected, right? In what way are you being pragmatic just by talking about possible policies? You're not going to enact them, right? So are we creating a micro consensus in our sphere of influence, and that is doing what exactly? I'm not sure. What are you doing?
Lo-fi memes. Since you can't show memes. Then yes.
Roommate wants to show you this. I'm sure you've seen this before. This is quite the popular meme, right? I demand to be punished. Yeah, that's sort of what the prisoner... Yeah, I was zoning on. That's sort of what the prisoner is supposed to say, right? And so I think this kind of... Again, this complete preoccupation with a universal moral consensus, as if that consensus is reached on Twitter or even outside of Twitter, that's gonna do... I'm not sure what exactly, and Contra said at some point, what it was... I'm not sure I remember this thought. I had this thought about something that Contra said. Right. Right, it was in the voting video. I mean, which at the time I liked, but at this point I'm like, maybe we spent a little bit too much time talking about the 5,000 people that wouldn't vote for Biden because they were Bernie or Busters on Twitter. I don't know. Yes, in the voting video, she said something along the lines of, when people like Tabby are talking about revolution, you know, it's like when psychiatrists talk about suicide, where they say it's not whether it's ideation or intent, right? But to me, you know, what the other, you know, what Vosh and others are doing, it just strikes me as the same kind of ideation. But I think it sort of has a veneer of pragmatism. But I understand why it's so hard to escape that, right? I really blame them for this. Because, and honestly, I will blame lefties for this to an extent. Not for being cringe, not for being LARPers, not for any of that shit, but for never fucking proposing anything, right? So you ask people, because I was genuinely trying to understand, right? I was curious. It was like, okay, direct action. Like, what do you mean? Mutual aid. Okay, what do you mean? Right? Can you elaborate, please? Like, how is this worth my fucking time? Right? Because it's hard to imagine, right? It's hard to conceive of. And the most they can ever give you, like, even like Sexy's video when he was talking about this, protests? Is that all we fucking have? Like, really? That to me it doesn't seem that impressive. You know, I mean, Vosh will say, you know, we can do both, and I do agree. You know, we can do both. It's just you don't really seem that interested in doing both, and I wasn't either, right? But to an extent, again, it's because nobody really actually proposes in any serious, you know, way. Well, okay, let's do this, right? Can we do this in the here and now, right? Just for the consequences this particular action has. It creates a line of flight, you know, a line of possible escape, right? I don't know, is it a lack of imagination? And honestly, personally, I don't really like, protests are not fully direct action. I completely agree. Thank you. Yes, Champagne Brussels. I completely agree. It's building a wall instead of protesting to a government to build a wall. Precisely. And I realized recently this is precisely why I never really was into protesting. Or I don't know if have I ever been to protest? I don't really think so. It's like pride marches, but that's the most I've been there. And I mean, okay, part of it is that I feel a little bit awkward chanting slogans in a crowd. But the other thing is, you're begging, right? You're asking for something. And by asking for something, you concede that someone else has power over you, the power to give you something or not, right? So just, a more intense form of saying please? I don't know. And if protests are your idea of direct action, I understand why you'll stick with the Sogdom model of politics. And another epiphany I had is when I was talking with Doe, and it said, well, if we're talking about state politics or politics through the state, I agree that social democracy is probably the best you can get. I'm just not particularly interested in that. And I saw that, okay, I have a person opposite me who is who sees what I see, right? Back when I was a Sogdom, right? Who sees that, okay, this seems like, in electoral politics, this seems like the only plausible way forward versus, I don't know, the ideations of a Marxist-Leninist or, whatever else, proposition of a state-like society. This is the one I can most imagine working, right? If we're supposing that we're interested in society working, right? which we are if we're talking about state-like thinking. But then, so I started to wonder, okay, then, what are your politics then? And so at some point in the past few months, I challenged myself and I'm like, okay, can you spot these sort of opportunities where you can think of something that you or other people like you could do that doesn't ask, but rather it takes, right? That would qualify as direct action. Like, okay, can I come up with some more creative examples of this? And after a couple of months, I had come up with plenty. And I'm like, okay, now I'm starting to be convinced, right? Because now I see an avenue of political action that I hadn't really envisioned before, or I hadn't seen it in that way before, or talked about that way before. So for me, for example, I mentioned this a couple of times on Twitter, Sci-Hub is like peak direct action, right? Like the founder of Sci-Hub didn't go protest outside Elsevier's buildings to make their journals cheaper. No, she hacked them and she took it, right? And she made it available to fucking everyone.
Is he okay, by the way? I heard
I have no clue.
there was a lawsuit and I don't know about
There's a huge loss. Yeah, of course there are lawsuits. I think she's hiding somewhere in Russia. I don't know. I hope she's okay. And it's Sci-Hub. I'm not sure if it's gonna let me type the link because it's like sort of banned, but like I think this is the current link. Yeah. But no, like, and like what I'm trying to say is, well, it doesn't have to be, to use Deleuzean terms, you know, you can do something that's molecular. It doesn't have to be small scale. Because another thing that, you know, always made me more amenable to state-like thinking is precisely that I'm not particularly satisfied with doing something on a local or small scale. But it doesn't have to be small scale, right? Or like I could even bring up, like, I don't know, like the Tor project, right? Without the Tor project, without fucking Tails, Snowden would have been able to, you know, blow the whistle, right? So to me, it's become sort of this way of creating avenues, right? I'm really, really curious how Destiny would react if I were to talk to him about this. I'm extremely curious. I don't know if Android is still here, who, if I remember correctly, is a big fan of Destiny. Because I'll give him some credit that, you know, even though he's still doing, you know, sort of a similar thing, he sort of realized at some point, like, okay, we're not really doing politics right now, are we? Which is when he tried to become involved in, like, the local elections, and that didn't go particularly well after a while, but, and okay, you can say that's still, you know, obviously that's electoral politics, right? But still, this is some form of action, you know, like, this is sort of putting your money where your mouth is. So I'm very, very curious how he would conceive of, how he would react to such a politics. Because he most certainly can't claim that it's delusional, because, you know, I'm here and okay, this is an example. This is another example, right? Are you against these? I don't think you would be. So would you, in theory, support some type of action like that? If that's what direct action meant, would you be interested in that? Right? And I'm curious because I think he's been sort of pilled out of the, or he was at least at some point, pilled out of the terminally discourse. I mean, okay, he's on Twitter all the time, but you ask him seriously, I think to an extent, he's like, okay, political hobbyism versus actual politics, etc., etc. Okay, but what if actual politics isn't just electoral local politics, but it's other type of local stuff, or even larger stuff, that's also, you do it, right? There's an attempt to convert online energy into something more. Yeah. The fact that you can do electoral politics is really fascinating. Just imagine the non-reality of internet poll. Internet poll, you mean police? You mean like the lefties who sort of I actually I didn't watch that part of the drama. So what I'm aware from the situation is that many lefties were really mad about this and sort of went around trash talking and defaming him to the point that the mayor or candidate mayor or whatever could no longer associate with him. And I mean, okay, I don't know if that's what set him on this sort of quasi pseudo reactionary arc he's been on for the last 5 months. I mean, can you blame them? I don't know. Oh, Paul is in politics. Yeah. No, I don't think it's that he couldn't convert the online energy. I mean, people did show up, especially when it was the Senate race, right? But if anything, it was internet politics that kind of ruined it for him, right? I want to throw a block party in my neighborhood to meet my neighborhood since I want to build a community, but I hate that. That I can just do spontaneously. Would have to call the order. Oh, Jesus fucking Christ. It's legal. I've missed a lot of the chat because I've been rambling. Did have some cringe generate. Yeah, he did. I mean, there were some points to some of the things he was saying on stream. I mean, on Twitter, it's a complete garbage fire. But some of the things he said on stream, I mean, I think there are some valid points there. But of course, he's also, missing a lot of other complementary stuff that would make his take much less inflammatory and much more understandable. Because, yeah, I think he's getting at something when he's saying people seem a little bit too obsessed with identities, qua identities, right? And yeah, I mean, that's not what queer is to me. Like, queer to me is supposed to be the dismantling of identities. So, but then again, there's the counterpoint to that where you say, well, yeah, but it messes up the codes, right? People using all these sorts of different weird gender terminology, whatever. And that's true in part. It's just, I don't think that's why they're doing it, right? But I don't mind it, right? I'm not gonna complain about it. Oh no, the Zoomers have diverse gender identity. Who cares? For a block party, and when the cops called in on me, I feel so distant from anyone but my family. That's sad. I'm sorry. Yeah. I don't know what to suggest. I don't want to get you arrested. I really want to do this video on spectacle I'm working on, especially as an investigation of how enjoyment shapes our relationship to politics and the world around us. Yeah, spectacle as in De Boer, I suppose. So, I've never really liked De Boer because, at least where I'm from, I think he's... The only contact I've had with his work is how he's been sort of appropriated by dumb fucks. So I don't know if his work is actually worth something. I assume if you're saying that it's probably worth something. If Tikkun are influenced by him, it's probably worth something. But just, it reminds me a lot of... I think it's his philosophy. Well, I'm sure it's deeper than what most dipshits say. I think there's probably some elements about it that make it more vulnerable to, a vulgarization. Which is something that's so much less likely to happen with like Deleuze, because how are you going to popularize this, right? How are you going to pander to anyone using this terminology? I feel like the destiny problem is that people fail to separate which part of his politics is truly bad and which part is just him being an asshole. Yeah, I also occasionally find it hard to tell the difference. He's definitely been appropriate. Yeah. Um, let me go pee for a second and I'll be back. Can you entertain them for 5 seconds?
I can sit back there and play the log lady.
Do we have a log? Oh, we do have a log. That's nice. Are you speaking to the log?
I am offering free cat videos. Free sleep cat videos.
This is Stirner, by the way. We just named him that because he doesn't share his space with the other cat. Or her space. I mean, we're using gender neutral pronouns in this house. Or gender mixing might be a better term. Yeah, this cat used to not have a name for many years, but we kind of reluctantly settled on Stirner. And this is Dorian. Good old cat here. Destiny and his 20 clones. I mean, the funniest thing about people cloning Destinies, I think they're all copying some simulacra of Destiny. You know, the shouting, the performativeness. You know, there's just a lot of that stuff, which is like, it's not exactly what Destiny does, is it? Right? That's why I want to bring enjoyment as a factor to it, because I think that gets overlooked when talking about spectacle, even by the board himself. Yeah, I can imagine that. I've always been drawn, and we were talking about this earlier, I've always been more drawn. So the reason I haven't ever been particularly drawn to Marxism and the related schools of thought is mostly because I was never really convinced about economics being the base, right, and everything else being the superstructure. I don't find that very convincing. I find the will to power and I don't know, like conatus. What's the term that Spinoza uses? Anyway, but yeah, desire and will to power. I find that's much more convincing, you know, as a drive of struggle, right? And like he says, you know, all history hitherto has been, you know, the story of class struggle. Like, if you just omitted class, you would be right on. You know what I mean? What did Deleuze say? Wait, I think he mentioned something similar. We're reading the Plateaus, which are extremely interesting. I think they're more I think they're actually easier to read than Anti-Oedipus. I think it's more interesting too because they're doing like their own sort of philosophical project here instead of mostly just critiquing. So wait a second. What was he saying about classes? It's probably somewhere here. Right. The profound movements, they say, stirring in a society present themselves in this fashion even if they are necessarily represented as a confrontation between molar segments. It is wrongly said, in Marxism in particular, that a society is defined by its contradictions. I'm sorry, obscure leftists. That is true only on the larger scale of things. From the viewpoint of micropolitics, a society is defined by its lines of flight, which are molecular. There's always something that flows or flees, that escapes the binary organizations, the resonance apparatus, and the overcoding machine. Things that are attributed to a change in values, the youth, women, the mad, etc. And also this idea of, micropolitics, the microphysics of power, the molecular, all of these things sort of connect to sort of the line of thought I've been developing with state-like thinking and onwards, right? Because what not I'm proposing, but where I stand right now, and what I've been talking about is more clearly a molecular politic, right? Are there gender-neutral pronouns in Greek like they, them? Not exactly. That's kind of an issue. So, and this is why this discourse is so funny to me, right? The do course, the it, its, pronouns, etc. It's really funny to me because that's sort of what we default to for non-binary people here. Because no, we don't have an equivalent to they. When we said someone, we say he. I guess it's always just masculine. So there wasn't some equivalent to use, unfortunately. So yeah, we're settling with it. Some like it more than others, But yeah, I really don't understand why people are being so ass-mad about this. I get, people being alienated by neopronouns. Okay, I get it. It's confusing to navigate, But, its pronouns already exist. You're not learning to say a, m, or something. What seems to be your issue? Because a lot of people have an issue with that. And the thing is, what's it to you? I don't understand. You know what I mean? Are you gonna... I don't know. I feel it's so profoundly fucking patronizing, right? What's good for me. Really? I mean, look, I don't get it either. I would hate being called it's, right? Not because it reminds me of an object or an animal. I would be fine with that. It's precisely because it reminds me of a kid. Because I think that's how people talk. I think people talk in it's when they're talking about kids in Greek. So what this reminds me of is being a kid. And I didn't really like that, Usually I wouldn't like, but that's just me. I'm going to say, no, I'm not going to refer to you as an object or a kid. What? I mean, I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but it's just... I didn't expect, so many people to be so flustered about it, that they're still going on about it. State-like thinking is the ideological superstructure using the bathroom within your mind.
Can I do something really annoying? And tell you to read these 4 lines?
This is in Greek. Am I supposed to translate it? In real time? Oh no. Okay, let me read it first. Okay, this is in the middle of the text. I haven't read the whole text, and I don't understand what he's talking about, so I can't translate it. I think the way to bring Marxists into dialogue with theories of desire and drive is how economic configurations interact, correlate, I assume, and configure desire and drive. Yeah, perhaps. I've always been, from the first times I interacted with Joe, I remember telling it this particular thing that, again, one of the reasons why I wasn't that convinced by modernist thinkers is that just desire is not there. Neither in their conception of a future society, neither in their conception of how we get there. Desire just doesn't... I could be wrong. I could be completely wrong. But it doesn't seem to have center role. And it's just everywhere I look around. Maybe I'm misunderstanding something because I've only read like half of ideology and state apparatuses.
Which I will make a request for the next episode.
Perhaps. Maybe I'm misunderstanding something, but it's just ideology seems just so fucking ubiquitous to be relegated to the status of superstructure. Like so much of what people do and like produce, just so much of this is driven, you know, and I'm not talking about anything complex either, you know, like the simplest thing, which is recognizing, and this is what I was getting at today on Twitter, which was recognizing the legitimacy of someone who wants you to do something, or you know, or doesn't want you to do something, right? Be it the state or someone else. My point isn't necessarily, you know, I don't know, just go obnoxiously, you know, like illegalism, you know, just do this, you know, compulsively. But it's more like, just don't believe them, right? Just don't buy the legitimacy. Don't feel like you're actually obligated towards them. Don't feel like you own them an infinite debt, right? And that's mostly all I'm asking here from people. And like, okay, well, and the other thing is to be honest with themselves, right? I'm usually like, I'm not gonna criticize someone for their position morally. That would be a little bit ridiculous. But what I will say, you know, is like, okay, if you're going to say something, I'm going to make sure that you know exactly what you're saying and where it's coming from. It's narcissism not using your pronouns because it makes me uncomfortable. That's basically what it is, but it's very curious that it's just particularly it's that stuck. Which of course proves the point of the people who use it's. Also, Hungarian is a superior language. We only have gender-neutral pronouns, based Hungarians. Well, like, how much do the material reality of institutions impact our ideological understandings, perspectives? There's some parts in Sublime Object that I want to write something on, where Zizek opens the way for new interpretations of historical materialism that relate to the role of desire. Yeah, I'm sure Zizek can do this. And yeah, the cat is destroying our bookshelves. Yeah, I'm really into that Deleuzian sort of stuff, but I will eventually pick up, you know, because I'm very curious. From all the Zizek shit that I've seen, I still haven't gotten a good idea of what he proposes exactly. There's a book by some Greek guy who's a Lacanian, I think, and it's called The Lacanian Left, I think. I'm also curious to read that one. And what they suggest. And I think I think they go from, who's the guy with Chantal Mouffe? What's his name? I'm forgetting.
Is it Laclau?
Yes, Laclau. Right. I think he goes through Laclau and Mouffe, and then to Badiou, Zizek, and who else might it have been? I don't know. It's an interesting book. Let me see what else was said in chat that I've ignored. We always bothered me too, specifically because North American revolutionary politics are so opposed to any form of structured organization, to separate activism from politics. Oh, by the way, I'm sorry, but I really, I don't like the word activism, actually. It feels so castrated. It feels like it sounds like a hobby, right? No one gets, is a serious actor. Like, people who have done political action, I mean, some people might refer to them as activists, but I don't know if that's, I don't know. Activism just, to my mind, brings something like, oh, hey, Kaz. Brings something rather, I don't know, lukewarm. Something that doesn't have an edge. That cannot threaten. You know, that's on the safe side. I don't know, maybe it's just me. Who's saying Jesus loves you? Who is that person? What? The way I understand impossibility in this context is in relation to... I'm sorry, this is completely all over the place because I can't control my stream of consciousness. The way I understand impossibility in this context is in relation to the symbolic and the real, yes. Within any configuration of the symbolic, there are certain possibilities that are foreclosed, seen as impossible. They're impossible until they aren't. There are ruptures that reconfigure conditions of possibility. This is related to what Zizek calls, talks about when he says he believes in miracles. Yes, that's interesting. Although I will say that I feel a little bit ambiguous about... Well, I mean, clearly, I guess Deleuze would be even more radical about that. But I do feel kind of ambiguous in terms of... I know what Zizek is getting at here. Yes, the rupture of the real. But see, yes, I'm ambiguous about that kind of an event. Because it just... I don't know. To me, it seems like you're forcing a trauma onto someone to reconfigure their conditions of possibility. And which is precisely why I don't like terrorism at all. It's just an explosion of the real. Unwanted, unforeseen into someone else's neurotic life. And that strikes me as, I don't know, it's deeply traumatic. And so I'm very ambiguous about that. But I'll read more into it. I mean, that's not to say I don't think we should tend towards the real. You could call it something else in Deleuzean terms. I certainly agree we should tend towards that, but it feels like something you should be careful with. And I think Deleuze got to realize that, right? Let me get to the body without organs chapter. I think it was fairly well explained, actually. Not actually how to make yourself a body without organs, but what the concept is. Let me find it. Yeah, so this isn't exactly what I was looking for, but it's very, very interesting. But before I get to that, let me answer chat a little bit. Are you still taking Kratom? Curious. Yes and no, I guess. I mean, I don't know. When was the last time I took it? It was a while ago.
Physics.
Right. That must have been like 2 weeks ago, probably. I think we're sticking to a once per 2 weeks schedule, hoping not to become junkies. Although I am seriously considering taking it afterwards because, again, I'm crashing on Ritalin literally right now, so that might be helpful afterwards. How is it going with you? Are you, because I know like you are taking a lot of it, so is that going anywhere? I don't know. I hope that's going well. You know what's a fire topic? Do you have any takes in regards to the Vosh versus Professor Flowers debate? Did I watch this? I remember the discourse. I know a lot of people were mad at that. I know Corvidae was on the side of Professor Flowers, which sort of makes me take Vosh's side instinctively, but no, I haven't. I think I watched some of it, but I don't remember having particularly strong feelings about it. I must have watched it while I was working in the background. Still taking it daily, doing fine though. I hope you're fine. Just be careful. at least with Marx and Desire, it's that he lived before Freud, yeah, as well as Nietzsche. But he was alive during the later part of Marx's life, yeah, which I think really opened the door to heroes die. Yeah, absolutely. Although I will say this, just after I do something about this table. This desk. It's constantly moving. Let me get at this because this is really interesting. It's not exactly what I was going for, but let me see. Let's start at the beginning. So at any rate, you have one or several. It's not so much that it pre-exists or comes ready-made, although in certain respects it is pre-existent. At any rate, you make one you can't desire without making one. And it awaits you. It's an inevitable exercise or experimentation already accomplished the moment you undertake it, unaccomplished as long as you don't. This is not reassuring, because you can botch it. Or it can be terrifying and lead you to your death. It is non-desire as well as desire. Particularly in this chapter, they seem to be... Right, so why such a dreary parade of sucked dry, catatonicized, vitrified, sewn up bodies? Because they're talking about the body without organs of the junkie, of the masochist, of the hypochondriac, etc. When the body without organs is also full of gaiety, ecstasy, and dance. So why these examples? Why must we start there? Emptied bodies instead of full ones. What happened? Were you cautious enough? Not wisdom, caution. In doses, as a rule imminent to experimentation. Injections of caution. Many have been defeated in this battle. Is it really so sad and dangerous to be fed up with seeing with your eyes, breathing with your lungs, swallowing with your mouth, talking with your tongue, thinking with your brain, having an anus and a larynx, head and legs? Why not walk on your head, sing with your sinuses, see through your skin, breathe with your belly, etc., etc. And of course the classic, where psychoanalysis says, stop, find yourself again, we should say instead, let's go further still. We haven't found our body without organs yet, we haven't sufficiently dismantled ourselves. Yes, my point here being is that, okay, clearly trying to, or using or creating the body without organs, or however you want to put it, entails some form of experimentation with the real, right? And they recognize, especially in this chapter, this is not like, you can fucking botch it, right? The real is not like, and at some point I think they say, the worst thing isn't to remain stratified. What does it say? Anyway, my point being that this ethics of the event or ethics of the real, I'm a little bit ambiguous and suspicious about it, because I'd rather take the form of careful experimentation and sort of deneuroticization rather than like a traumatic reconfiguration of your symbolic coordinates, right? Which I think, I could be wrong, I think is a direction Zizek is going for, right? I gotta get into Deleuze. I've only consumed 2 podcast episodes about his philosophy. Yeah, you've got, there's a lot. There's a lot. He's definitely a very, I want to say original thinker, even though like so much of what he says, like you can see it in Spinoza, Nietzsche, Bergson, etc. So in one sense, like how is he original? But on the other hand, in terms of the rest of the post-structuralists, I think Deleuze brings such a fresh air, you know, like, and I think it's his Spinozism mostly, but he's thinking like completely, I don't know, I don't want to say outside of the box, but like he's flowing like against the river, sort of. I think an example of reconfiguring of possibilities that isn't as traumatic is something Badiou talks about with May 68. There used to be a belief that students, when uniting with the workers, was seen as impossible. Students are bourgeois intellectuals and therefore have different class interests. But what made 68 change was precisely this configuration. Students could unite with the workers. The impossible became possible. Yeah, okay, I see this. This is much less dramatic than what I envisioned. But interesting what you're saying. I think another way of thinking about it is insisting on the missing signifier. That's interesting. Maybe a semiotics perspective could help here. I'm going through the chat like from 45 minutes ago. Wait, I lost it. Where was Helmslev? Wait. This was interesting. God damn. I feel personally attacked as a birdie or bust. Let me ask. Where did Helmslev go? Semiotics. Where is it? Fuck me. Right. There we are. Maybe semiotics perspective would help here, like how in Helmslev, there's always a substance purport and expression purport, an amorphous mass of form or meaning, which then tends to coalesce into certain meanings and words. I haven't read Helmslev. I'm only familiar with his work through Guttery. I think he's probably mentioned at least a couple of times in Chaosmosis, which is an extraordinarily hard book for 100 pages. It took me like 3 months to finish it. But it's interesting. I'm gonna head out, have a good stream. Thank you for joining. And do keep up, I guess. I will be updating. I will get a schedule, I promise. Have fun. Oh, Ozymandias, hi! I've arrived, you look great, thank you. I have the opportunity to read in the original language since my first language. Oh, Deleuze. Right, so that might help avoid the bad translations. But Deleuze, here's the thing, and this is again one of the reasons why I like him so much, is he's so... What's the... Plηθωρικός. Multiplicitous, I guess, right?
Opulent, I guess.
Opulent. No. What? I would go with multiplicitous, right? He's so multiplicitous in the sense that, is there anything he hasn't written about? I think there's a part of Deleuze that's like an old school philosopher in like the Kantian tradition, but there's also, and of course this is not what most people know about Deleuze, because they know his other far more radical and revolutionary side, right? But I think there's something about him that sort of reminds me of like older, sort of more systematic philosophy, starting from like a basis of metaphysics and then taking that and sort of going with that places, right? Because like there's difference in repetition where he lays out his metaphysics, and then there's the logic of sense, which continues that and goes into how sense is produced, and which again is a lot. I think it's, I've heard logic of sense is rather Lacanian. I want to compare with what's that called? The structure and field of speech. What's that? Or is it the Rome discourse? Which is the one where he's very explicit about how sense is created. I mean, it's very dispersed, but I want to see and compare, because Deleuze's approach seems a little bit more systematic, and I'm very interested in how sense is created. And then there's the political stuff, and then there's 2 books about cinema, and then there's What is Philosophy, which talks about like art and philosophy and science and chaos. I think I haven't read it. What else is it? Like there's just so much, you know. Whereas, you know, with Foucault, and I love Foucault, but or even with Lacan, they're very niche, right? They sort of take one sort of field, right? So for Foucault, it was archaeology and genealogy, right? and again, like the study of power, etc., in the Nietzschean tradition. But there's a sort of consistency there, right? Deleuze, he's all over the place. I'm really sad he didn't get to publish like the grandeur of Marx, because I'm really curious like how he would have read Marx. Right? I'm getting some whiffs of that here and there in Anti-Oedipus and stuff, but I'm curious, like where he finds Marx to be, well, grand. Right? Zizek really hates Coterie, which I think is an unfair judgment. It is an unfair judgment, I think, because probably like deep in his mind, he sort of knows that like Guattari's, because Guattari went on afterwards, and again, people sort of focus on Anti-Oedipus, maybe the Plateaus too, but then Deleuze has all that sort of stuff that I mentioned, and then Guattari has a fuck ton of stuff too, right? Like there's the Machinic Unconscious, there's Schizoanalytic Cartographies, and these are like these fucking crazy books. They're gonna take you like a year to read and understand. And he elaborates like how he thinks the Machinic Unconscious works there. And to me, like, yes, this is, the true succession of Lacanian thought, right? Because that's where he came from. And I think Zizek, as a more orthodox Lacanian, might feel a little bit of resentment in that. There's also this anecdote, and I keep saying that I don't know if it's true. I've heard a lot of people mention it. I've heard Liv posting mention it. This anecdote where supposedly Lacan called Deleuze to his office and told him, like, all my students are fucking idiots except one, but I want you to be my successor, or something along those lines. I don't know if that's true. That sounds almost too, funny, I guess, to be true. I don't know where it comes from, who said that first. But it would be fun if that's true. Holy shit, yeah, I really want to read his Marx book. Who's Marx? The Deleuze's Marx book, right? Yeah. Are there notes of this? Like, even like scribbles, something? I haven't seen anything. But I mean, you never know. They published the 4th volume of the History of Sexuality, so anything is possible. The main problem with Duke's conception of event is his implicit teleological belief and progress. Events are always seen necessarily as progressive. Interesting. Other Lacanians like Zizek and McGowan have taken him to task on this. I mean, I have a distaste for Badiou, first of all because he bullied Deleuze with his Maoist comrades back in Vincennes, and secondly and most importantly because, oh my god, he's so obsessed with set theory, and personally, I want to get rid of set theory. In mathematics too. I don't want to bring set theory. This is enough. This is enough of the metaphysics of identity. Can we please move on? The episode of Machinic Unconscious Happy Hour with Totem going right. Angli is a nice telling between Deleuze and Lacanians. I think I might have been listening to that recently, but I'm not sure. I always confuse Machinic Unconscious Happy Hour and Acid Horizon and these other podcasts, and I'm not sure. Like, I put them in the background, and I'm not sure what's playing. You have the same guests, usually. Todd McGowan, Taylor Atkins, and so on. The anecdotes about the European philosophers are so bizarre, it's wonderful to listen to. Yeah, it's funny, I first learned that Badiou... I actually met Badiou, by the way. I actually have his email. He gave some sort of a lecture, which was kind of bullshit, by the way. It was more populist than my taste, but it was like, okay, he's one of the only surviving people of that generation, so before he dies, I'd like to meet him. It was a few years ago, and I went, and then I went and got his email. I'm not sure where that is, but it's probably somewhere. I don't know if he answers emails like Chomsky does. Right, and so I went there, and I was meanwhile in contact with this psychoanalyst and philosophy connoisseur who we are friends with and who we met at a philosophy conference, and she used to be a student of Deleuze, and she used to be a really close friend of Guattari, and she worked at Laborde. And she's the one who first told me anecdote about Badiou coming into Deleuze's classrooms and bullying them, because she probably had like first-hand experience of this, which is pretty awesome. She probably lived through May '68 or something. The fact that Chomsky still even answers emails is so funny to me. What else is left for him to do? I mean, I don't want to be mean, but like he's probably answering emails like, I mean, just sort of waiting to die. This is too mean. I don't like this. Also, Dark Gauna. How do I pronounce this? Do tell me what were your thoughts on the Flowers Vosh debate, because I don't have any strong opinions on it. By the way, Obscure Leftist, do you have like a channel or something? Have you already like uploaded anything, or is just at the stage of like ideas? I could, if you can post it in chat, maybe. Chomsky still doing geopolitical analysis. Of course, the nitty-gritty stuff you don't see on Twitter or the news. Possibly, I don't know. I know he did a podcast with Contra that I never watched. I don't know. Like, is Chomsky an anarchist? I can't say I'm convinced. I mean, I don't want to do the no true anarchist meme or whatever, but like, he comes from a tradition. What tradition does he come from? Is it analytic philosophy? Is it just some segment of neurology and linguistics? Where exactly does he come from? Because he's certainly not continental. I believe Lacan wanted Deleuze to be his successor, but what that meant was apparently serving to aggrandize Lacan. Yeah, of course, yeah. Of course Deleuze wouldn't be like, yeah, of course I'll be considered as your successor. Yes, thank you, great master. Seeing as Miller ended up filling that role, what has happened to him, I think it was good that Deleuze refused that role. Yeah, sure. But it's fun if that actually happened. I don't think that Deleuze should have, devoted his life work to, continuing like Lacan's Hoover. I think Miller has been saying some transphobic shit recently. I think so. It's mostly just ideas. Yeah, I've been having some ideas myself lately. Although I can't fucking discipline myself to actually write a fucking script. There are some interesting readings of Lucifer, the TV show. Which is, trash TV, but there are some very interesting readings on like the second and third level, which we've been pondering over here, and they do deserve a video, and I've been thinking about this. And more in the more explicitly political side, I feel like it doesn't work with the branding, right? Like either you're a streamer and you upload your stream segments, or you're a YouTuber, right? Doing both is kind of weird on the branding. I don't know. Who knows? But maybe we'll see. The other thing, because there's stuff that I've been thinking about, and this I really do want to formulate in a video because I want it to be rather structured. Is about deterritorialization, accelerationism, neoliberalism, shoe on head, these types of Nazbol populist lefties in particular, and where exactly their ideology stems from, because my main observation is that they seem to share the same drive with reactionaries and I don't want to trash talk Shuna too much because she just followed me like a week ago. And I do enjoy some of her content. She's pretty funny. It's her saving grace. She doesn't take herself very seriously. But in terms of, okay, I'm not on camera anymore. In terms of ideology, I think And this is why she used to be more of a reactionary, I think. And okay, she's now more reasonably aligned, but I think it comes from this is a leftism that like comes from the wrong place, if you get what I mean. I think it's a sort of, regressive leftism that strives, that really wants identities back, right? What the deterritorialization of capitalism has stripped them of, I think they want it back. And that's not the direction I think we should be heading towards, clearly. I don't know, I think there's a common thread there between, Shu and Sargon and others. They share the same aesthetic distaste of neoliberalism in particular, right? And when they say neoliberalism, they mean this deterritorialization that comes with globalization, right? This stripping away of borders, identities. This is why she's so intense about borders, right? And I don't know, I find this really curious. And I do think that this, I don't know, like I want to formulate my thoughts. I think this is a very interesting topic, and I want to formulate my thoughts rather clearly. I think this would be suitable as a YouTube video. But yeah. Yamler has been doing dressphobia, yeah. McGowan actually brought it up to a French colleague who at first thought he meant Milner and was shocked because he clarified similar to the colleague said no one gives a fuck about him. Yeah. So did you post this on Twitter? I saw someone post this on Twitter and was like, yeah. As a communicate. Oh, wait. Okay. So, yes, I think Professor Flowers versus Foch debate this was around it mostly came down to a gross misunderstanding of the colonial theory, where a lot of different schools of thought were cited by everyone as if they were equal. That's likely what happened from Fanon to Boaventura de Souza to Walter Mignolo. Yeah, you're losing me here because I have not read much on anti-colonial literature. I'm sure I'll get to that eventually. Right now I'm on my, Plato's Tikkun phase, a little bit of Stirner, sort of like that, and I'm sort of planning a very very Deleuzean feminism phase after that. We'll see. Maybe I'll get to. I've read almost nothing about Reyes, and I probably should read Fanon. People say he's really good. He's more into analytic ideas on the whole. He had a spat with Hillary Putnam, maybe. He's very analytic. His poverty of stimulus argument is crap, by the way. Yeah, I don't know many of his arguments. I think again, like, this is not the way these people are anarchists is just so weird to me. And this sort of like, I don't know, I feel like there's a lot of aesthetics going on here. Or like, I think I read somewhere at some point that Chomsky had at some point supported like the Khmer Rouge or something. It's like, how can you possibly miss this? I don't know. Or was it not the Khmer Rouge? I could be completely wrong. Fanon is pretty important for post-colonial thought. Yeah, as well as critical race theory. Yeah, I haven't read like almost anything from that stuff. And yeah, to be, perfectly honest, right? I don't like, I live in a country that's basically an ethno-state almost, apart from like immigrants from Albania and, now refugees and stuff. Other than that, it's mostly kind of like an ethno-state. And yet there's people who want to make it even more of an ethno-state. Whatever. And the thing is, I haven't exactly lived the American social reality. So like, it's very weird how Greek people treat black people. I think it's still a racism, it's just a completely different kind of racism. I have the context, obviously, from American pop culture, but I haven't lived in that society. So I guess like my unfamiliarity with this reality is part of the reason why I haven't sought out, race studies and post-colonial theory and stuff like that. But I will eventually at some point. There's just so much to read. There's so much to read. I used to do this thing where these things that I really wanted to read, I'm just postpone reading them because I really wanted to read them. So I want to, postpone, the enjoyment. But I'm like, and then of course I didn't enjoy them because the fucking fantasy, right? Like, of course I didn't enjoy them then. It was never the right time to enjoy them. So I'm just, at this point, I'm like consuming everything I can consume. And I'm, comfortable in the idea there's just so much out there, so much interesting stuff out there. Like, I won't get bored. Racism in a lot of European countries takes different forms. American racism, it's, to many extents, it's very, very different. And there are other aspects in which it is very similar, but just, altered and projected to, like, the characteristics of a specific ethnicity. But it does seem like there are similar, neurotic causes to that type of racism as well. But I'm very interested in racism in psychoanalytical terms, in terms of, the analysis of bigotry. I'm very, very interested in analyzing bigotry. And I think this is also what Contra does best, analyzing bigotry. I don't know, I find it very interesting. And ideology in general, right? Like how people sort of, and I guess it's dialectic, right? But how they dialectically, I guess this is an abuse of the word, right? But yeah, how they sort of move from one perspective to another, like how they base their conclusions, like how they convince themselves, how they manage to convince themselves that what they're saying is, fairly reasonable and correct. I find it fascinating. Yeah, Chomsky's primarily a linguist, which tends to be forgotten. No, yeah, I'm aware. But is he a good linguist? At some point, I will also get more into linguistics, probably along with the logic of sense and other stuff like that, and probably read Hounslow, read Saussure, probably. And then it will be properly contextualized what exactly Chomsky is saying. I'm pretty sure Guattari mentioned him in Chaosmosis. Let me see if I can find that. Are you tired?
I'm a bit, yeah. I'll lay down for a second and I'll get up.
Μην κοιμηθείς και πριν από μένα και με αφήσεις μόνο μου να κάνω stream?
No, don't worry.
Now, I'm never gonna find this in this book, but... Oh, Helmsleb, here he is. I understood probably 1/10 of what he's saying here. But he does cite Chomsky. Did I literally get the page right on my second try? The notion of an abstract semiotic machine isn't new. We find it in Chomsky, who postulates its existence at the root of language. But this concept, this expression-content opposition, as well as the Chomskyan concept of the abstract machine, remain too bound up with language. For our part, we would like to resituate semiology within the scope of an expanded machinic conception, which would free us from a simple linguistic opposition between expression and content, and allow us to integrate into enunciative assemblages an indefinite number of substances of expression, such as biological codings or organizational forms belonging to the socius. What is very interesting in this book, and I'm sure he does in other books, and there's traces of that in the collaborative works, is the semiotics of biology. How he views semiotics, like a-signifying semiotics, and what he wants to do with them. It's very interesting. I'm gonna get more into that. I need to do my homework, so I'm gonna leave. Well, have fun, or have fun studying. I mean, happy to have you here. The Chomsky School of Linguistics was important in the debate against the behaviorists. I don't have the proper context for this. American racism is shaped by the history of slavery and settler colonialism. Yes, of course. A good place to start to understand the divide of the colonial thought is Zizek's critique of Walter Mignolo's anti-European sentiment. Interesting. Should I read the anti-European sentiment first and then the critique? Or can I jump directly into that? There's an interesting parallel between Chomsky and Vosch. They both started as self-professed anarcho-syndicalists, and progressively became more and more moderate, placid with the justification of pragmatism. I don't think it's a coincidence that Vosch cites him so often. I don't know much about Chomsky's work, but I'm not exactly convinced he had, let's say, gone into what I would have considered an appropriate depth to hold such a position, and therefore when it was challenged by various events, it sort of trickled down to a more lukewarm view. I could be wrong, but I think this is sort of what happened. I think there's a lot of misunderstandings, or shall I say, there's a lot of readings of I guess Marx. I've been reading Marx lately, just a little tiny bit, and it's more interesting than I thought, to be honest, because a lot of Marxist-Leninist crap is just completely unreadable. And he doesn't write like a Marxist. He writes like someone who has an original insight, right? Like he doesn't necessarily write like a modernist either. You know what I mean? There's an interesting style. It's just not represented in how Marx is usually viewed in political circles or pop culture. Like, occasionally he's funny, he's kind of a snob occasionally, which was a big surprise for me. I'm used to Nietzsche being that, but Marx, really? I didn't expect that. It was fun. And there's a lot of interesting stuff there, a lot of interesting readings, even though I don't necessarily agree with everything he's saying. But I just feel like the Sogdom readings and the ML readings and the more communization current readings, I could be completely ignorant here, but reading some of his works, it seems like a lot of stuff is ambiguous. I could be reading it wrong, but there are places in Marx where you're like, yeah, of course, like what does he have to do with Sogdems, right? And there are other places where you're like, okay, he's going towards this type of state-like thinking. And there's the manifesto, which I read like 3 days ago or something, and like at the end of one section, I mean, okay, at various places he talks about, violent, uprisings and okay, take back, whatever, okay. Interesting. This does not lend itself to a lukewarm reformist reading, sure. But then again, like, he says, okay, take power and implement these measures at first, which are, at least in my context, in 2021, like some basic, Georgist Sogdom reforms. So, like, is your dictatorship of the proletariat just to do these reforms? Like, am I reading something wrong? Is it just me, or is it rather ambiguous? Whereas I also see, like, the later Marx of Capital, I read some passages that do on their own, out of context, they do lend credence to some Sogdom readings of him. I don't think that's all there is to him, nor do I think it's the most interesting reading. I'm really trying to read him without reading him through the other people that have already read him, and I've met Marx through them, right? But it's a little bit hard to do because I see, here I see where they got this part, right? Why X said, that Marx would have supported this, and, there's some other evidence over here that, again, out of context, can support something completely different. And like, okay, I see where you're getting this from, but I don't know. It's not very post-structuralist of me to seek like the one true meaning. Marx gets deified and sterilized by Marxists. Yeah, a lot of Marxist writing is shitposting against other radicals. Yeah, I'm afraid you need a lot of context for that I do not have. Historical context. So you didn't like it, Romero was correct. No, it's not that I didn't like it. I haven't read it yet. I just started it. It's somewhere here. It's somewhere over there. Yeah, it's there. No, I did start it. It's not that I don't like it. It's just that I lack the historical context for it. Right? Like, who was Ludwig Bonaparte? Am I supposed to know this? Right? Like, what are these dates? Am I supposed to know who these people are? I do not. I'm sure it's very interesting. I'll read it. If you want to talk about the history, I'd be down. Yeah, probably next stream, maybe. If you're up for it, maybe we could talk about it. We'll see. For example, the most used English version of capital says the form of value, while the Italian version says the form value. There was a previous comment. There are also a lot of bad translation of Marx's texts. Using Italian, yeah. Okay, that's interesting. I know some German. I have like a B2 certificate. I don't remember much. But I've been thinking of getting back into it since so many philosophers write in German, like Kant, Hegel, Nietzsche, Stirner, Marx, all of these people. So, I don't know. Maybe just for that I should get back into German. I remember Bosch saying Chomsky was a more important philosopher than Zizek. How would he know? Malatesta was dunking on syndicalism before it was cool. In short, Louis is failed nephew. Yeah, I realized that. I think he said something. I really like this part. He was like, well, whereas my version of the story, explains how a mediocre person came to have the role of a hero, and I'm like, I am here for this shade. I did not know he had it in him. Anywho, I'm going to be ending stream like extremely soon because I am extremely tired. But this was a fun stream and a very fun comeback, even though I was exhausted. When should I tell them the next stream is going to be?
After Chris arrives and William.
Is it on Monday or Tuesday?
When they arrive? I don't know.
Anywho, yeah, so keep in mind, so the schedule is probably going to be either Mondays or Tuesdays around the same time, like 5 p.m. EST, something like that. Are the links under the stream not working, by the way? Wait, what do you mean? What links? Do you mean Streamlabs? Because that, we have a problem with that. Let me see. Patreon donation. Okay, yeah. I don't actually have a Patreon yet. I I made the sticker hoping that I would make a Patreon, and I didn't ever. I will probably, maybe. I was a little bit ambiguous over whether to get Twitch affiliate. I think I'll probably do it, and then maybe we can do subs there instead of Patreon because it seems like completely disconnected. So yeah, I haven't connected any links, but the donation link is an issue. The donation link is an issue because my PayPal account has been restricted for some odd reason that is not at all clear to me, and I will work on fixing that, or I'll make another account. So yeah, no donations on this stream, unfortunately. But hopefully we'll fix it. Things are looking good, let's say. I want to get into a routine, right? I want to get into a schedule. As for the type of content, I'm still sort of pondering this. It's usually whatever I think. It's probably going to be whatever I think is worth discussing each week. So like, I imagine I will be browsing Twitter, maybe watching a couple of streams or so, and meanwhile I'll be reading, what I would be reading anyway, right? So maybe some Deleuze, maybe some Lacan, maybe some Stirner, Marx, whatever, and whatever I'm reading that week, we could also discuss. Yeah, so whatever I find philosophically interesting to talk about will probably be the content of each stream. Perhaps after I get going, maybe we can see about debates stuff. If anyone, not of you people, but if anyone else is interested. I don't want to do like the debate bro shit, but I'm sure there are some debates that I would be interested in having. And I'd also be up for like chill conversations, right? Philosophical conversations, and like bringing you on stream not to debate, but just talk stuff out. That's sort of what I'm thinking. I don't know if that sounds good to you. Probably what I'm going for. Anywho, I'm probably gonna go take some kratom, have a bath, and lay down and wake up 2 days from now. Debate, Ramor, perspective, philosophy, that would be fun. Yeah, that would be fun. But I need to really, really do research on their positions. And analytic philosophy is so mind-numbingly boring. I've tried before. And I never ever get through it. It's just so boring. Like, is that why we still talking about morality? But yeah, I'm maybe 5 months from now or something. It would start. I do want to do this, because this Discord is just really a pain in my ass. Anywho, I hope you have a very nice evening. Thank you for joining me on my first stream back and listening to me rambling. And I will see you on the flip side.